Hey guys, so today I am bringing you a slightly different style of video. I'll admit I got this idea from Jason over at the Heavy Blanks. He does these great little collection videos, so I thought it'd be a great way to kind of like show you what's on my shelves without going to the trouble of doing an entire like bookshelf tour, because those are quite a pain to film. I might do a bookshelf tour at the end of Vlogmas, but it is a lot of work, so I am going to kind of do little snippets this way, so you guys can see some of my collection. So as you can tell, today is my Penguin English Library collection. It's not my entire Penguin English Library collection though. These are just the ones that I have read. I do have another batch of them on my other bookshelf that I actually film in front of. These go on my big bookshelf, which are beside my bed. And I had to split them up because I own so many Penguin English Libraries. So I just have all the red ones on my big bookshelf and all the like unread ones on my smaller bookshelf. So I thought I would just show you all of my red ones today. I've been working all day and I kind of feel like I don't want to necessarily be on camera, so you're just gonna hear my voice and I'm gonna talk about the books. I figured that would be a nice easy video today. So the first one is Thomas Hardy's Tess of the D'Urbervilles. I have read this last summer, not this summer, the summer before, and I really enjoyed this. This is a really depressing book. I'm gonna hold it up so you can see the whole book. I didn't realize I couldn't quite see the bottom of that. But yes, I really enjoyed this. This was my first Thomas Hardy, so it was a nice introduction to him. Move that off to the side. Next up is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. I really enjoyed Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but I found it was a bit predictable simply because I've heard the story so many times. So I found that took away from it a little bit. There is another short story in this about an imp in an ink bottle, if I remember correctly, which I didn't really enjoy. I do want to read some more Robert Louis Stevenson, but I'm not like foaming at the mouth to do it. Next up is Howard's End by E.M. Forster, which I absolutely love. This is my first E.M. Forster book and I absolutely fell in love with his writing. I think he's a fantastic author. I've read 4 works by him. I've read Howard's End, A Room with a View, Maurice, and The Machine Stops, which is a short story by him. And the more I read, the more I love E.M. Forster, but this will always be my favorite one because it's my first one. Next up is the aforementioned A Room with a View by E.M. Forster. I read this was my second one, so I read this after Howard's End. I still really enjoy this. I love the adaptation with Helena Bonham Carter in it. I think it's hilarious and fantastic. And it definitely gives, if you haven't seen it, it gives you a different kind of perspective on Helena Bonham Carter. Next up is Anne Bronte's The Tenant of Wildfell Hall. As you guys know, I absolutely love this book. Anne Bronte, aka the best Bronte. Yeah, I can't sing this enough praises. This is, if you like Jane Austen, definitely check this out. This is much more Austen-like than her sisters, so yes. I'll switch to the other pile to make this more even. Next up is The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne, which I read this year. I really enjoyed this. I'm looking forward to reading more Nathaniel Hawthorne. I have one of his books on the way to me, The Marble Fawn, which is kind of, it seems like it's almost like The Secret History by Donna Tartt. So I'm really looking forward to that. I really enjoyed Hawthorne's writing style. I thought this was a really well-crafted story. Next up is some more Thomas Hardy, and that is Under the Greenwood Tree. I didn't enjoy this as much as some of my other Hardys, although I do love this design by Coralie Bickford Smith with like the bamboo on it. Although it does have the best heroine name ever. The heroine's name is Fancy Day. That's pretty fantastic, but I didn't enjoy this as much as Tess or Far from the Madding Crowd. Next up is another Bronte, and that is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I'll actually probably get rid of this edition sometime soon, mostly because I'm looking forward to getting the vintage editions, and I do like them a bit better than this. So I did read this edition when I reread this year. I am somewhat reconciled to Jane Eyre, although I do prefer Wide Sargasso Sea. I still think Rochester is a dick. One of my favorite works, Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray. I love Oscar Wilde. I think he's fantastic. I think he's highly satirical. I highly recommend him. I want to read more of his works. I've read The Importance of Being Earnest and have like studied it, and I've studied and read Picture of Dorian Gray, but I want to get reading some of his other works. Ooh, that's cramping my hand a little bit. Next up is one that I hate and that I haven't bothered to get off my shelves yet, and that is Henry James, Daisy Miller, and The Turn of the Screw. As you guys know, I am not a Henry James fan. I think he's a misogynistic ass. This is kind of reinforced in Daisy Miller and The Turn of the Screw. Yep, that's all I'm going to say about that one. So next up is Villette by Charlotte Bronte. As you guys know, I absolutely adore this book. This reconciled me to Charlotte Bronte. Lucy Snow is such an unreliable narrator, and she knows she's an unreliable narrator, which is fantastic. Sorry, my hand's cramping, so I'm going to set it down. It's a really heavy book as well. This is quite the heavy tome. I also think that this is one of my favorite designs on the Penguin English Library editions. I like the fact that it's not such a repetitive pattern as all the other ones are. It's kind of more of just like a design, whereas the other ones tend to be more pattern-like, but I do love this work. So next up is Thomas Hardy's Far from the Madding Crowd. I think this is my favorite Hardy. I also really enjoyed this cover with all the bees on it. I loved the adaptation that came out earlier this year with, oh, what's her name? Carey Mulligan. Quite fantastic. Highly recommend that. And yeah, this is so far my favorite Hardy. A lot less depressing than Tess. Next up is The Warden by Anthony Trollope. This is quite a slim volume. I read this, I think it was earlier in the year, maybe it was last year. I got this because I accidentally bought the second and third one in the series, and I absolutely refused to read, like I needed the next one, so I bought it and read it and didn't really fall in love with it, but I feel like I need to revisit it. I think I was in a bit of a weird frame of mind, so because it's so short, I think I'm going to try and revisit this to kind of give it a second chance, so I can continue on with the series. Next up is Elizabeth Gaskell's North and South. This is my first Gaskell read. I absolutely love this. I think the plot is somewhat similar to Pride and Prejudice at its base, in that it is a couple of young, you know, a man and a woman basically meet, and it's dislike at first meet, and then they eventually fall in love in that way. But Elizabeth Gaskell deals more with the Industrial Revolution rather than like, I mean, to be fair, she's writing during the Industrial Revolution, I think. I'm pretty sure she is, but a lot of it deals with that kind of whole movement towards the Industrial Revolution, and this one especially. This and Mary Byrne deal a lot with the Industrial Revolution. Next up is Wilkie Collins' The Woman in White, which I absolutely adore. I think that this was a fantastic novel. It's... How do I explain The Woman in White? It's kind of like a mystery, it's gothic. I read this after I was like re-reconciled to gothic after starting reading Shirley Jackson. So I really enjoyed this work. This was my first Collins. I haven't read anything else, but I do have The Moonstone sitting on my shelf waiting to be read. Another Gaskell, and that is Cranford. This is probably, I think, the smallest Gaskell. This tells about a small story, like a small village in England, and kind of the goings on. I didn't enjoy this as much as North and South, but it was still really enjoyable. Next up is H.G. Wells' The Island of Dr. Moreau. I absolutely adore this. This deals with vivisection, which is the dissection of animals while they are still alive. This was a popular thing going on in the Victorian era for the pursuit of science, but there was a lot of strong like reaction against this for anti-vivisectionists. And Dr. Moreau is basically a mad scientist who gets exiled from England for performing vivisections, and he kind of creates his own animal type people creations. So this is definitely like more on the horror side. So if you like that kind of thing, check this one out. I'm gonna keep pulling from this because then I only have 2 left in the other pile. The next one is The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. I didn't enjoy this as much as The Island of Dr. Moreau, but it is still relatively enjoyable. Basically, it's about a man who invents a time machine and the adventures he goes on. It's kind of cool. Not my favorite, but not a bad read, and it's super slim. So definitely give that a, if you're working your way through Wells's work, it's a definite must stop. Next up is some George Eliot, and that is Silas Marner. This is kind of, I've seen this compared to A Christmas Carol, in that it is very like didactic in its message. It basically deals with Silas Marner, who's a very miserly old gentleman in a small English village, and his life is turned upside down when a small child comes into his life. That's about it. It's just about, you know, it's a good little didactic tale. Not as heavy-handed as The Mill on the Floss. I found The Mill on the Floss a lot harder to get through, I think because this is a lot smaller, so I really enjoyed this one. Next up is Elizabeth Gaskell's Wives and Daughters. She actually died when writing this, which makes me really sad, but I did enjoy this. This was my second Gaskell. Second or third. I can't remember if I read Cranford before this or not. I think I probably read Cranford before this because it was a lot smaller. But this is really fantastic. This deals with a young girl whose mother has passed away and her father's subsequent remarriage and all the trials and tribulations with that. Next up is another Gaskell, and that is Mary Barton. Like North and South, this deals with the Industrial Revolution, but this actually deals with working class people. So this is a nice change of pace. It's a strong tie between North and South and Mary Barton as to which is my favorite Gaskell, but I do strongly recommend this one. And last but not least of my Red Penguin English libraries is The Mill on the Floss by George Eliot. This one I struggled with. I really enjoyed it at first, but I found the didactic message that was carried throughout the work and kind of like the strong undertones really started to bother me towards the end, unfortunately. So it took away a bit from the plot. I found it dragged in places. This is not my favorite George Eliot. I much prefer Middlemarch to this, but you know, I'm working my way through her bibliography, so it had to be done. So that is my completed Penguin English libraries that I have read, and I will see you guys for day 7 of Vlogmas. Happy Vlogmas day 6. It's day 6. Also happy first day of Hanukkah. Yay!